Hey friend, welcome to this kind of different style video. I'm currently in São Paulo in Brazil for a research trip, and I thought it would be really fun to bring you along as much as I can and kind of show you a little bit about what it's like actually here on the ground at a research trip. So buckle in, I guess, because this is going to be kind of a different video from usual, but hopefully you find it useful. Stay tuned. This is our lovely research schedule, which has been beautifully laid out by one of my teammates. So we're here from Monday the 7th, no, it's the 8th of July, and then we're going to fly out at the end of the week on Friday. Tuesday, as you can see, is actually a public holiday here in Sao Paulo. So we're not too sure yet what we're going to do on that day, but I think we're going to treat it as an immersion day where we're actually going to sort of go out and explore and enjoy Sao Paulo and sort of get to know what it's like for the locals living here, what's the pace of the city, how do people get around, how do people order food, just generally get a sense and idea of what living in a sort of mega city like Sao Paulo is like. So that's going to be a really fun day, I think. Okay, right now I gotta go and meet my team for breakfast, and then we're gonna head over to Spaces, which is a co-working space. We've rented a lab or like a room there where we're gonna conduct user interviews. So yeah, I better get going. Now, because we're in Brazil, we're doing the interviews in Portuguese, and obviously I don't speak Portuguese and neither do most of my colleagues. So we had two translators with us who were gonna help us do the translations throughout the day. And it was really cool. They had these little like walkie-talkies, almost like what you get when you go on a city sightseeing tour. So we could have these little sort of headsets on, and they would quietly translate in real time through a microphone, and we could actually hear the translations. And this is so cool, by the way, and super high tech, and it was a really nice way to kind of hear the translations and get to understand what the user we were interviewing was saying. So we did a total of 4 user interviews today, and we had 2 prototypes that we wanted to test. We had one big room that we actually had split off into 2 rooms with a divider, and in one room we had the participant, we had the researcher who was doing the interview, the translators, and then a note taker. And then in the other room was the rest of us, and we had a TV where we could actually see what was happening in the other room, and we were just kind of listening through the little walkie-talkies, taking some notes, discussing as the interview was taking place in the other room. Then at the end of the day, we had a little debrief about what we learned that day, and we have a little presentation where every day we're kind of jotting down like the key takeaways or the key highlights from that day. So we had a bit of a discussion about what we learned, what was interesting, what was surprising, and what kind of the key themes were that came out of that day. It's useful to do this on the spot. I've done research trips before where we don't debrief until the very end of the trip, and that way you have to like really think hard about what you learnt that week. So it was really actually quite helpful to do that at the end of the day, to just focus on what we learnt that day. Today is day 2, and today we are doing sort of an immersion day where we're going to go out into the city, learn more about the problem space, kind of try and understand what it's like for our users to work and do this kind of stuff in this kind of big mega city of Sao Paulo. It's also a public holiday, so hence why we can't do any user interviews, but I think we're still going to try and make the most out of the day. Day 3. Today we had several user interviews. This morning we did 2 career interviews with Uber Eats couriers, and then at lunchtime we ordered food from Rappi, which is a very popular kind of super app here in Brazil, and we ordered some food from there. We also ordered some groceries from there, which was really interesting and cool to learn a little bit about how they deliver other goods other than just a meal. Then we were supposed to have 2 interviews with eaters, but one didn't show, sadly, so we're trying to reschedule for Friday. But the other one was really good. She was very high tech, like she has used a lot of these kind of apps before. She knew how to use the phone, like she's like a super app user. She was very switched on and very smart, and so it was cool to talk to her and learn about how she uses these apps and how she gets food and groceries, etc. That was super interesting. At the end of the day, we did another kind of debrief. Because we only had one eater interview, we didn't really debrief or talk about any takeaways from it, because doing only one user interview is not really enough to sort of get conclusions or draw takeaways from. So we had a bit of a discussion about the interview and some interesting things, but we didn't go too deep into like, oh my gosh, these are like some key themes and things we need to change, because it was only one interview. So hopefully tomorrow we have 4 interviews, all with eaters tomorrow, so that should give us a little bit more insight into some key takeaways. And yeah, now tonight we're gonna have a team dinner, which is super nice. And yeah, 2 days left on this trip. I'm gonna do more interviews, and yeah, see how it goes. Of the research trip. Tonight I am going back to Amsterdam. I'm excited to go home. You know, it's always that feeling like when home is kind of close, it's nice to go back. But I also really love São Paulo. The food here is amazing, the people are friendly, the weather's good. It's just a very interesting and cool city, so I'm kind of sad to leave. This morning we have 2 debrief sessions. The first, we're going to debrief on the customer interviews that we've been having over the past 2 days. I think we did a total of 5 of those in the end. And then we're having like an overall general debrief about the whole week. I think in the end we interviewed 6 Uber Eats couriers and 5 eaters, or like users of Uber and Uber Eats. And I think that's a pretty good mix. It's a lot of interviews. We all take turns taking the notes, which was really nice to kind of spread the load. And yeah, I think like doing at least 3 interviews on a particular topic is a good starting number to draw conclusions from. You know, if you just interview with one person, it's not enough to really get an idea of whether anything they said is a trend or common. So I think we did enough interviews. It was really good, super insightful. I think now, like, we've been having a lot of conversations over dinner and stuff about like the things that we've been learning and finding interesting and what we want or need or should do when we go back to the office. So I think the team's pretty inspired and has had a lot of learnings from this trip, which makes it all worthwhile. Okay, I've got about 10 minutes to get to the office, so I'm gonna go and check out, walk over to the office and have our debrief.